Hello everyone, welcome back to another Tea Time with Tia. I'm Tia, this is Geek Vibes Nation. Hope everyone's doing amazing today, this weekend. Happy President's Day and all that jazz. So this is another Tea Time with Tia. Let's get to it. Before we do, this is coldest water bottle. Link down in the description. I have my tea with me, and let's just get into the tea time right now. So this is going to be a bit of a review, and it's going to be a review of the new latest Netflix mini docu-series called Crime Scene: The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel. Now, as someone who enjoys true crime programs, which kind of sounds a little bad, but things like Unsolved Mysteries, the ID channel wouldn't be as popular as they are if it weren't for the fact that people love true crime stories. So, as someone who is a fan of true crime stories, I've watched a lot of documentaries, I've watched a lot of YouTube stuff, and if there is one thing that the true crime internet people love, as well as conspiracy theorists love, it is the disappearance and the ultimate demise of Elisa Lam, which is at the epicenter of this docu-series. It's exploring this very well-known case. People who, as I said, any YouTube channel that has to do with things that are eerie on the internet, unsolved mysteries, things like that, always cover Elisa Lam. I've watched a ton of YouTube videos on it. To me personally, the person who does it best is this YouTuber called Nick Crowley. I'll link his channel down in the description. I think he does a really good job in exploring not only Lisa Lam, but also the whole thing with water tanks, which apparently is a much more common for people to kind of wind up, unfortunately, deceased in water tanks. So I'll link his page down below so that you can watch his stuff, because I think he does a really good job. And I will say that after watching his stuff is kind of what solidified for me that Elisa Lam was unfortunately just a very tragic accident. But, this whole thing has kind of piqued people's interest for years. I mean, there is just numerous conspiracy theories. That video of her being in the elevator and looking very erratic has circulated the internet. It's piqued people's, curiosity just for so long. But as I just said, I really think it's just a tragic accident. And I believe that the docuseries that we watch kind of solidifies that. I will say that I really don't think anything too new was explored in this docuseries. I mean, it's a lot that we knew. We see the footage in the elevator. You get to know about her unfortunate, mental health issues that she's had, and it really explains quite, obviously as to how she ended up in that water tank. But the thing about The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel is that it kind of pictures itself as this sort of documentary series that's going to talk more so about the actual Cecil Hotel, and maybe trying to correlate it as a hub for this sort of tragedy. And while it certainly talks about the history of the Cecil Hotel, which is quite interesting in itself, and it is amazing when when objects like architecture can really take a life of their own. The Cecil Hotel was created in the 1920s, was quite a nice hotel, not luxury hotel, but a nice hotel regardless at some point, up until the Great Depression hit, and it had to kind of reinvent itself into a lower income sort of place for people to stay, and then throughout the decades kind of just became worse for wear. It does interview a few of the hotel staff, such as the former hotel manager, who does a pretty good job in kind of saying how it is just a building, and it's just really, I believe, its location that has made it kind of this place for people to unfortunately do some nefarious things, and a bit of its own lore where people just kind of want to dive into that. But there's nothing dark or supernatural with the hotel. It's just literally its location that has kind of made it what it is. But goes into the hotel and the ways that say they try to improve it throughout the years, its history. They interview also the maintenance person who unfortunately discovered Elisa Lam's body in the water tank. So and it also interviews the detectives, which is something that I've not seen before, so that was an interesting perspective to see where they were at. It did seem as if they were trying to do a pretty good job in finding Elisa, and they unfortunately were just not able to find her in time, if that was at all possible. But the interesting thing with the Vanishing at Cecil Hotel is that I felt at times it didn't necessarily know what kind of documentary series it wanted to be. At some point it, as I said, wanted to frame itself as this documentary that maybe was trying to blame the hotel in a sense. I mean, they were going through how many crimes had been committed there, how many deaths had happened there. They covered how Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, was a frequent person there. But, again, it's just a building, and I believe that the building manager that they interview does a pretty good job in kind of squashing that sort of, supernatural conspiracy theory that people kind of want to buy into. And then at the same point, it also wanted to be a documentary series that maybe was criticizing the YouTube community for essentially making this something that it wasn't. There's one YouTuber in it that kind of explains it perfectly, where he says that the video of Elisa in the elevator went viral at a time where people didn't even know what going viral meant because it was so new. You have to think about it that YouTube is so big now, and the whole idea of going viral on social media and stuff is so just in our brains. It happens all the time, but it didn't happen that much when Elisa Lam went missing, in the early 2010s. That, YouTube is still so new at that point. So it goes through that, and it shows all these YouTubers that just kind of flooded and wanted to get onto this Elisa Lam case. And it's in a sense that what I'm trying to say is that the documentary felt as maybe it was trying to showcase that, but then also kind of maybe made it seem as if these commentators and these web sleuths were actually helping, when in reality they were just making content. There's a difference. Like, if you've ever watched the documentary Don't Fuck with Cats, which is a very good documentary, but if you're an animal lover like myself, it's very hard to stomach the first 2 episodes. I believe I skipped some parts just because I didn't want to see certain things that had to do with cats and dogs. But in Don't Fuck with Cats, it's exploring how the web sleuths that were kind of watching this case were actually helpful in the eventual, finding or at least alerting the police as to who the person was. It's like they actually helped because they actually did their research. Really, what these web sleuths in the Elisa Lam case were doing were just kind of, again, making content on it. And it was almost like in the frame of the documentary was kind of and I'm not trying to accuse anyone of anything, right? We're all like trying to make careers out there on the internet, and I'm making a video right now. But you would have these certain people online that were going to the hotel years after, as if they were trying to capture something, and going up to the rooftop and really just kind of taking it too far and almost capitalizing on this because it's such a a mystery, and it's something that they could just jump onto. And there was one interesting point really in the documentary series that I didn't know about, that's not talked about at all, but it's about this death metal singer, Pablo Vergara, aka Morbid, who, for some reason, due to his music and his art, the web sleuths want to pin sort of the death of Elisa on him for no reason. Their correlation was saying, well, look at his music, look at his art, look at who he is, and he was at the hotel the same time that Elisa Lam was, so he must have had something to do with it, and to the point where, the feds even had to go speak with him. But the truth is that he wasn't even there the same time that Elisa was. He was in Mexico at the time that Elisa was in LA. He had stayed at Hotel Cecil about a year prior. And so obviously he had nothing to do with anything, but that didn't stop the internet from lambasting him to the point where he couldn't go into a career anymore, and even had said in the documentary that he tries to create his art and it's just not the same anymore. And it's like, wow, it feels like that should put things into perspective, and I hope that maybe will slow certain people down. But who knows? I don't know. It was a fine documentary. The style it was fine, right? I mean, it wasn't a boring documentary, and it didn't feel rushed or anything like that. It just didn't feel like it just felt like it didn't know what it wanted to do or what story it wanted to go with, whether it was just talking about the hotel or talking about the internet sleuths, or was it supposed to be talking about Elisa Lam? But it was talking about Elisa Lam, but really, because there is actually no mystery at all, it really didn't focus on that. It was just using, say, that as a catalyst to talk about the other things. But in reality, it was so much of what, if you would already know this, if you were watching any sort of YouTube series on it, you would know so many of the details already. And in a way, I don't know if the documentary did any sort of justice to portraying Elisa Lam in a positive way. I mean, this is a young girl who unfortunately lost her life, and it was unnecessary. And we got to see a few of her Tumblr posts, which in one sense is, you're paying homage to her by letting her speak, essentially. But then at the same time, that feels a little intrusive, because who knows if she would have wanted that to be showcased in the first place. And also in the sense that it just kind of didn't talk much about really who she was as a person, just kind of said, well, look, she had these problems, and look at her in the elevator. That's all we know her as, is the girl who is looking a little weird in an elevator. And I don't know, I mean, honestly, I would have loved to hear more from Elisa Lam's family, if that was possible, from maybe friends who knew her, get more of a testimony. Like, that's another thing that I think that Don't Fuck With Cats did is that while they focused on also what happened to the poor animals that I believe his name was Luca Magnotta had just done horrible things to, he had also killed a person, and that's something that wasn't often talked about a lot. And what they did was that they actually interviewed people who knew the victim, to kind of make sure that people knew that this was a person, this person had interest, this person had disinterest and all of that. So we got to know who that person was, and it didn't really do that in this. I will say that, like, Don't Fuck With Cats is a great documentary series. And speaking about Richard Ramirez, on Netflix, that also just came out not too long ago as well, called The Night Stalkers, another mini docu-series talking about him. So again, if you're into true crime and everything, that's a very good documentary series that goes through things really well and interviews the right people that it should be interviewing, and I believe mentions the Cecil Hotel maybe once or something. So it is interesting, the Cecil Hotel, just in the sense of its architecture and its history. You can kind of imagine what it would have been like back in the day. I kind of like that the hotel manager said things like that, just because I too am just kind of this person that loves to imagine old architecture and the type of people who would have went in there, and the sort of ideologies and the ideas that people had once they were building this massive hotel in the middle of downtown LA. Another thing that the documentary didn't do so well is that, you know, they wanted to also humanize the people who are on Skid Row, because it's saying pretty much that Hotel Cecil was a place for them to stay, so that they couldn't stay, so they didn't have to stay outside. And it's trying to, and they had a guy at some point say, you know, we say like just get rid of homeless people, but where are they going to go? And it's like they had much more of an opportunity to really dive into that as well, but in truth they only really had one person who was sitting there kind of standing up for, you know, these people on Skid Row, where it's like I just feel like maybe they could have at least, they put a lot in this docuseries, a lot of different narratives that they were trying to explore that never really felt like they connected too well. And because they were trying to do various narratives, it felt as if they didn't concentrate on one, and not one had the amount of detail that maybe they should have had. So again, you can go on Netflix right now and check out Crime Scene, The Vanishing at Cecil Hotel. Let me know what you think about it, if you agree, if you disagree. Have you heard of the Elisa Lam case before? And if so, what are your thoughts? And in no way am I trying to shade any of the YouTubers who were part of the docu-series, because I believe that some of them at least acknowledged that maybe what they were doing was a little exploitive to a sense. But again, let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please like this video, please subscribe. We are under 100 followers away from reaching 1,000 followers on YouTube, and that's super exciting to me. So please make sure that you check that all out, and I'll see you on the next tea time. See you guys.